Today we have Jason Van Camp, a real treat, and we're really excited to have him today. So quick bio on Jason. Jason Van Camp is a Forbes Business Council member, a Wall Street Journal, Amazon, and USA Today best-selling author, a decorated U.S. Army Green Beret, a world traveler, and an entrepreneur. Jason is the founder of Mission 60, a leadership consulting firm comprised of Medal of Honor recipients, U.S. Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, and other Special Operation Force members, which he founded in 2009. Jason also founded and is the executive director of Warrior Rising, a nonprofit dedicated to helping veterans achieve success in business through instruction, mentoring, finding access, and maintaining the veteran community. So with that, welcome in, Jason. Thanks for being here.
My honor. Thanks for having me, Chase.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited for this episode. This is the first time I've had a member of the military, a former member of the military on the podcast.
Nice.
So excited to get your perspective and hear some interesting insights.
Open book, my friend.
Well, the first thing I ask guests usually, Jason, is to talk about your upbringing a little bit, and what should guests or listeners understand about your childhood or your teenage years to get a better idea of who you are today.
Yeah, so I'm not from Utah. I grew up in Virginia. I was born in Washington, D.C. And growing up there were two enemies. One was the Russians, and the second was the Dallas Cowboys, and not particularly in that order, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a huge D.C. sports fan. And my father, he grew up in a very, very poor household in Maryland, and he was drafted into Vietnam. And one thing you learn about in basic training is you don't volunteer for anything. And my father went against that rule, and he volunteered, and he was selected to go to France during Vietnam to work on this new technology called computers. And so he kind of missed like the combat, and he was in France this whole time. And while he was there, he and his buddies went out to Paris one night, got way too drunk, came back to the barracks, got into a bad car accident, and my dad broke his back and lost most of his teeth and got into a horrible, horrible accident, which kind of affected his health his whole life. Wow. My mother was an Air Force brat. My grandfather was in the Army Air Corps, which later became the Air Force, and he was in World War II on the Pacific side doing some stuff there. And so she lived all over the world. She went to high school in Germany and eventually ended up in Washington, D.C., and that's where my parents met. My mother eventually worked for Delta Airlines, and we had a 5-person family. I'm the oldest in the family. Okay. And my family, particularly my mother, she really believed in me and pushed me and wanted me to try everything and do everything I could possibly do. And I did a lot of sports, and I was really good at football and lacrosse and some others. And I eventually got a scholarship to go to West Point. I got a nomination to go to United States Military Academy at West Point, and went there when I was 18 years old. And when I was just over 19, I decided to go on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I got selected to go to St. Petersburg, Russia. Wow. And then I came back to West Point, and I finished my career there. And during my 6 years at West Point, not counting my mission, I guess counting my mission, 4 of those years I played football for the Army football team. So there were some great memories, some terrible memories, some good seasons, some bad seasons, and I guess that's how I grew up.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I guess during your teenage years, was there a time, you're from a military family, was there a time where you decided, hey, I want to go down that path as well, go to West Point, Army football, or did it just kind of happen with the football thing and the scholarship? What was the deciding factor to go down that route?
My mother always used to say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future, right? And it doesn't apply just to your friends. It applies to your neighborhood, your community, your culture. And the culture in Washington, D.C. is one that's very, very patriotic. And so you see a lot of families, a lot of households where the father or the mother is or was serving in the military, has served in the military. And that was normal for me. And so it wasn't unusual to have a career like that, right? I think it's a little unusual once you kind of start getting further out west, Utah and things like that. There aren't a whole lot of those experiences for folks. But I never thought to myself, I'm going to be a military guy. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to West Point. I'm going to do these things. I was very, I guess, short-sighted. So I was really looking at 25-meter targets my whole life. I wasn't looking at those 300-meter targets. And when I got recruited to play football, really I started getting a lot of letters when I was a junior. I had a really good season my junior year. And I thought, oh, man, I'm going big time. I'm going, Florida State was the big program at the time. I got a letter from them. I was like, man, I'm going to Florida State. I'm going to, LSU or some big time program.
Sure.
And my senior year, when the colleges and the universities started getting serious, they were like, hey, man, you're a linebacker. You're just over 6 foot tall. You're only 190 pounds, man. We like you, but, we've got some other bigger recruits, and things like that. And so I was really depressed and really upset, because it was pretty clear I wasn't going to be able to go to that big time program that I thought I was going to go to. And so a lot of the smaller schools started recruiting me, and West Point was one of them. And the recruiter there was super aggressive and came to my house several times and just really wanted me. And it feels good to be wanted.
Yeah, for sure.
And, he came to my house in February, just my senior year, and he was like, Jason, we got to know, you got to make a decision.
Yeah.
And I looked at my parents, and they both wanted me to go to West Point. They really wanted me to go to West Point. And so I decided to go.
Got it.
I gave my commitment. Yeah. That's why.
That's great. Well, yeah, it sounds like a combination of factors. And how during your football experience, what did football teach you? How was that? How was that experience? I imagine it's a different level, kind of across the board, going into the military academy and West Point relative to perhaps another school. But what was your experience like playing football there, and maybe one or two lessons that you learned?
One, don't trust anybody. And I think it goes not just at West Point, but all college football coaches, man. They'll come to your house, they'll tell you one thing, and then as soon as you get there, it's a completely different story. Like, hey, what's your name again? Who are you? And it's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? When I went to West Point on my visit, I remember seeing the cadets. I'm like, hey, what are they doing? And the coach is being like, don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. Come on over here. Let's take a look over here. You know what I mean? Like, they're trying to pull the wool over my eyes so that I wasn't aware of everything that was going on, because they just wanted me to get there. And once you're there, they're like, okay, my work is done. Now it's up to you. You got to bust your ass and prove yourself to me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't, being naive and young and not having an older brother or anybody to show me the ropes and say, hey, Jason, this is how it's done. I was hoodwinked, I feel like. And so for me, that was the first lesson as a teenager, don't trust people. Trust but verify. So you believe them, and then you give them an opportunity to prove themselves, right? And that's what I learned. One is trust. Second is self-reliance. And so when I was younger, when you're in high school, your parents take care of you. They put a roof over your head, they feed you, they do your laundry, all those things that parents do for you that you take for granted. And then when you get to college, especially at West Point, you got to do all that yourself, more or less. You're on your own. You got to wake up. You got to you got to shine your shoes. I've never shined shoes in my life before, but not only do I have to shine them, they have to be glass. You know what I mean? It's crazy. And so I feel like my parents prepared me for success in life, but I wasn't prepared for a lot of the military lifestyle.
Yeah, I bet.
Into the military lifestyle.
Big changes. What did you study while you were there?
So I had no idea what direction to go. I remember in high school, late my junior year, my history teacher asked the class, hey, what are you guys going to do? You need to have a plan. What are you going to do next year? And I remember thinking, man, I have no idea. And I remember people in the class were raising their hands like, I'm going to Ohio State. I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. And I was just shocked. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This dude already knows he's going to Ohio State. He's already selected. He's already excited about it. And he knows he's going to be a mechanical engineer. I don't even know what a mechanical engineer is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And
so I started to panic a little bit, and I started to say, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to become? And at West Point, when you're a freshman, you basically don't take any electives. You have to take certain classes, and you kind of go that route. But eventually you pick your major. And like I said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And then most of the Army football players were selecting the systems engineering major. And I really didn't know what that was, other than everybody was taking it. And a lot of the professors were pro Army football, and things like that. So I went and did that, and I hated it. I hated every second of it. I wasn't like a math guy, and it just wasn't challenging for me. So when I left on my mission, I came back. I said, you know what? I speak fluent Russian. I'm just gonna go take a Russian major. And so that's what I did. I was a Russian major, and it was great because I spoke better than most of my professors. And
yeah.
I got a lot of respect for that. And I won an award, the General Lefke Friendship Award for best speaker. And I think it was a great decision. But as far as using Russian as a career, there's not a whole lot to that.
Sure. Yeah. So at West Point is the expectation, and this is me, I just don't know how it works, but when you go into the academy and into the university, is the expectation that you will then subsequently serve in the military? Is that part of the program, or is it kind of free to do what you like? How did that work, and what were the next steps after football and graduation for you?
Yeah, so when you go to West Point, you know that when you graduate, you are commissioned as an officer in the Army. Okay. And you have a 5-year commitment. And some people have a 3-year commitment, and you can do some other things, and National Guard and some other things you can do like that. But for everybody, it's an understood 5-year commitment. Okay. And so you graduate and you become a second lieutenant, and then you're off leading troops. If you leave before your junior year, you don't owe anything back, but you can't really transfer any credits. I think that's how it goes still. If you leave after your junior year, even a day after your junior year, then you owe the military service time. So they send you as an enlisted guy, to a base somewhere. Got it. And that even accounts for if you got kicked out or if you have an honor violation or something like that.
Got it. Okay. So then after graduation, where did you go, and what did that look like for the next 5 years? That was your service that you were required to do.
Kind of the same thing. Like, what branch should I go? All the Army football guys are doing a field artillery. It's just historically been our branch. And so I went field artillery. I thought about going infantry. The infantry officers at West Point were a little too intense for me. They just weren't my people, which is odd because once I got to the Army, like, they were my people, I thought about going military intelligence. I thought about going aviation. Ultimately, I said, I'm going to go artillery. And they send you to the officer basic course in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So I was there for, I guess, 8 months or so. Okay. And while I was there, that's when 9/11 happened. And so we show up in, I think, late June, 2 weeks after graduation. And then you start learning your craft. You start learning how to be a fire support officer, a fire direction officer, a second lieutenant, and then 9/11 happened. So it changed everything, changed the landscape. We were an Army that was training, and you were being judged on your ability to produce in these training scenarios, and also your PT, physical training scores. And now you're being graded on your ability to fight and survive and thrive in combat. And so it changed everything. And one of the things that changed me is, if I'm going to go to combat, I don't want to be sitting in the back supporting dudes that are on the front line. Like, I want to be on the front line. Now I'm excited about the military. Before I was like, I'll do 5 years and then pursue something else and make a lot of money or whatever. Now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make my ancestors proud, man. I'm going to actually go fight. I'm going to be at the front line. And so I volunteered to try out for Ranger School. And so there was like a 6-month-long or so pre-Ranger training program. And we started with over 100 guys. We finished with like 12 guys. And of those 12 guys, 9 guys went to Ranger School, and only 3 of us graduated. Oh, my gosh. And so I did that right after Oklahoma. And that was awesome. Loved every second of it. A great experience. And then I was deployed, or I was sent to Korea for a year. That was my first real duty station.
So, before we go to Korea, backing up to the Army Ranger School, 100 people started, only 3 graduated. So maybe dive in a little bit, like what was the most challenging part of that? How difficult was it? I mean, from the physical side, I'm sure the mental side, how did you kind of get through that process? I'm sure it's brutal. I mean, you see, I mean, I'm sure it's depicted in movies or what have you in other ways, but I'm sure it was just an incredibly intensive program to get through.
Yeah, but you know, the 100 guys that showed up, that was pre-Ranger training. That was before you even go to day one. You know, and they wanted to make sure that the artillery guys that attend Ranger school graduate. They don't want to have fallouts. They don't want to have people that quit. And so what they did was they had artillery officers that were Rangers that had gone to Ranger school previously and graduated. And the guidance was just break these kids off, just destroy them.
Jeez.
And so every morning we'd go for about an hour and a half, 2 hours of just mostly cardio, mostly really long, hard runs. You know, just in formation, just breaking people off every day. And so we did that for a long time. And then you slowly start to see people dwindle. You know, people are like, you know, wake up in the morning, they're feeling sick or they just don't feel like doing it and they just don't show up and then they're out. And the last day, we had 12 guys there. And so we did a little bit of ruck marching. We did a little bit of land navigation. They taught us a few things, but mainly it was physical. Like, just let me break you off. And if you can get through this 5.5, 6 month pre-training, I have a pretty good feeling that you're going to survive at Ranger school.
Jeez. So it was like 6 months of just brutal, physical, demanding training.
Yeah, just
working guys down.
Crushing your nuts, man. Just stomping on your face, you know.
Golly. And Ranger, so is Ranger, is that term a ranking, or is that describing kind of the type of combat, or what's the name there?
Well, it's a special group. It's a special unit of soldiers.
Okay.
You know, predominantly is for the Army, but sometimes they'll send some Navy or Marines or Air Force guy who Coast Guard, I suppose, too. They can attend. And it happens in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
And there's 3 phases. At least it changes from time to time, but when I went, there were 3 phases. You know, the first phase is it's called Derby phase, and that's, you know, at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I guess it's about a month or so. And you do some basic stuff. You do a lot of you do physical training, so they test you to make sure you're good, and then they mess with you in your tests. You do fighting, you know, you do planning, you go on some missions, mock missions, you know, land navigation, they do a lot of that. And, you know, it's intended to get you in the right mindset of, you know, being a Ranger, going to combat, like knowing the things you need to know, surviving, leading. They say it's the best leadership school in the world. The second phase is if you graduate from the first phase, you go to mountain phase. That's in Dahlonega, Georgia. So there's big mountains, and you're kind of rolling into it now. Like, you're at a good pace, and you sort of have a team, and you know what you're doing. And most everybody's been weeded out.
Sure.
That you think is going to fail. We still have a lot of recycles and failures and so forth, but people that are there, like, you got a good idea that they're gonna graduate, and you basically walk up and down mountains all day long and do missions, you know, and you get graded on your mission and so forth. And then the third and last phase is in Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and that's jungle phase. And so instead of the mountains, you're now in the jungle. You're in Zodiac boats. You're in swamps. You know, you're doing missions there, which is interesting. You lose a lot of weight. Like, I lost 28 pounds, and
wow.
If you fail any particular phase, you recycle that phase. And if you fail it twice, you recycle all the way back to day one.
Oh my gosh.
And so the interesting thing is, you know, you can always quit and say, I'm done, I don't want to be here anymore. But the instructors won't ever kick you out. All they'll do is recycle you. And so the only way you can leave is if you quit. And that's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense for life as well.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so it was a great course. I loved it. I was luckily, knock on wood, 61 days straight through, true blue, you know, so I didn't recycle anything. And like I said, it was awesome. I had a great time.
That's awesome. I mean, talk about dedication and just perseverance, man. Sounds incredibly brutal, but that's great.
You learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about the people next to you.
Yeah, I bet, no doubt. So then you went from the Army Ranger School to Korea. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
So I was showed up at Camp Casey, and I was about to walk into my battalion commander's office, my boss. You know, you show up, and one of the NCO's non-commissioned officers, he was out in the hallway, and he was a Ranger. You know, and he saw me, and he saw the Ranger tab on my uniform. He's like, "Hey, you're a Ranger?" I'm like, "Roger." He's like, "You just getting here?" I'm like, "Roger." He's like, "Hold on a second." And he went into the battalion commander's office, came back out. He's like, "Hey, you're coming with me. You're coming to my unit." And so it was sort of like, without anybody even knowing who I was, you know, without even having a conversation, I was getting the best opportunities, the best jobs, the best positions, because I had a Ranger tab on my uniform.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a really interesting thing. And so I was sent up north by the DMZ Panmunjom. So I was at a one company base called Camp Giant. I don't think it exists any longer. And I was attached to an infantry unit. And of course, we're in an armistice with North Korea. So the worst, you know, technically still going on, but we didn't see any combat or anything with North Korea. You can see the North Korea flag from my barracks, you know, where we lived, which was pretty cool. But had a great time. You know, a lot of people travel the world, but they're just visiting places. They're getting the, you know, the canned one-size-fits-all approach. Like,
sure.
Here's a picture of me with this camel. Here's a picture of me riding this elephant. Like, everybody else has the same exact picture.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can't really say you've traveled the world and experienced those things unless you've lived there. You've been there. You've seen things that other people haven't. You know, when people go on their missions, like for me, Russia, like I lived there. I know the culture. You know, I've experienced it. I didn't take a picture at Red Square and then call it a day and say, I've been to Russia. Like,
right.
Did you really go to Russia?
Right.
It was almost like going to the airport. Oh, I've been to the Amsterdam airport, but I've never really seen the Netherlands. And so it's the same thing with Korea. Like, I lived there for a year. You got to understand the people and meet them and, you know, see how they operate and really understand the culture. So learn the language a little bit. You know, it wasn't a very difficult language to learn. But I loved it. It was a great time. I'd go back there in a heartbeat.
That's really interesting. I mean, I'm sure, understanding the dynamics between North and South Korea and being kind of in between there, and it'd be incredibly interesting. And then to your point about, you know, your commanding officer seeing your tag, the Ranger tag, I think in life, you know, credentials are important. You know, whether it's a qualification for schooling or a degree or even a class you took, and maybe it's not even official accreditation, maybe it's just experience and qualifications, but going out and being willing to do all the hard work that you did at the Ranger School or in business, you know, going through and grueling lessons or gaining that experience to then, you know, at some point be able to step up and someone be like, hey, this guy's done it before. He knows what he's doing. And so it's an interesting point. I think that's really cool. So I read, Jason, that you then went to Iraq. Is that right? From Korea, or after your experience at Korea?
Yeah. So the initial invasion kicked off, and the deployments, short deployments to Korea, are only only a year. Okay. And so they were like, "Where do you want to go next?" And Fort Campbell, 101st Airborne Division, they were deploying to Kuwait to go on the initial invasion. And so I said, let's do it. And so I went to 320 Field Artillery, was assigned to an infantry unit up there, 187 Rakkasans. And so we went up from Kuwait all the way up the entire, you know, country of Iraq, from the south all the way up to Mosul, which is up in the north. And then we were assigned a border security position on the Syrian border. And so we lived in a grain silo and, you know, monitored people coming in and out for a while. There weren't a whole lot of operations or fighting going on. As soon as we entered, there was a little bit of fighting, but the Iraqi army ran away, they quit, they threw down their weapons, and then the insurgency, they didn't know what to do. They weren't organized yet, and so while we were waiting there, the insurgency was building up and putting their leadership together and coming up with plans. And so for most of the time during my first deployment, we were riding around in Humvees that weren't up armored, doors off. Every now and again, we'd get into a skirmish. More or less, we were trying to rebuild the infrastructure and things like that. So we got to meet the people and understand the culture, and it was just a different people, different way of thinking than what I saw, what I've seen in America or Russia or Korea or anywhere else. It was just wildly different.
Yeah, I bet. What an experience. Maybe throughout your whole time in Iraq, what was maybe one of the most impactful either stories or experiences that you had, and how long were you out in Iraq in total?
So the first time I was there for about 9 months. Okay. And I write a lot about my experiences in my book Deliberate Discomfort. Yeah. One of the experiences was on my second deployment, and was to keep a long story short, essentially it was we would hand out humanitarian aid items, baby food or soccer balls or just things like that. And these villages, remote villages, would appreciate it. But essentially we were doing these things to gather information and, paint a picture and put a plan together and that sort of thing. And we came back to one village, and I saw a guy, I saw these empty baby food, Gerber baby food bottles, and there was a big spoon in one of them, and eventually found out it was this old man that was eating the baby food, and we were like, hey, I was angry, so I picked him up. I'm like, hey man, you've been eating this food? My interpreter was asking him, and he's like, yes. I'm like, this was meant for the babies. You're stealing food from these babies. You're a disgrace. You're despicable and whatever. And he's like, no, the mothers gave it to me. I'm like, you're a liar. Bring the mothers here. And my interpreter went and got the mothers. I'm like, hey, listen, I just want you to know that we're not going to tolerate this. I know this man's been stealing the baby food. We're going to stand up for you. I want you guys to take this baby food and give it to your babies. And the mothers were talking amongst themselves in Arabic and confused. And my interpreter was like, no, sir, Captain Jason, they gave this old man the baby food. I'm like, why? It doesn't make any sense. Why would they give him? Like, you don't have to be scared. You don't have to say you gave him the baby food. I know he stole it from you. And they were like, no, we gave it to him. He's the elder. He has to live. Like, if he dies, then we lose all of his knowledge and his power and his network, and we don't want him to die. We can't have him die. And so it was sort of like, well, would you rather have your children die than this guy? And they kind of looked at me like, yeah, of course. Like, is that a rhetorical question? Like, are you serious? Yeah, of course we want our kids to die. Like, if a kid dies, we'll just have another one. They've only been alive for a short period of time anyway. This guy's been alive for 80, 90 years. And I was like, wow. And I even said this out loud to my interpreter. I'm like, man, we have a much different way of thinking in the United States. Like, when our elders, get to a certain age, we say, oh, they lived a happy life. Let's put them in an old folks home. And most people just sort of forget about them and just say, it is what it is. But if a kid dies in America or in a Western society, it's catastrophic. Like, how do you recover from that? People, like, their whole lives can't recover. And one of the women said, if that's how you treat your elders in America, then you are the monsters. Wow. And so that's just an example of just little things, the way people think differently in different cultures.
Wow. Yeah, that is interesting to see how people have different perspectives, Western versus Eastern, and different cultures. And that's something to keep in mind for sure as we're thinking about our elders and paying respect to them. What was maybe the most difficult part about being, your entire U.S. military service? What were some of the most challenging things, and how did you find the mental fortitude to overcome those?
I just kept, I'm ambitious. And so I kept pushing the envelope, kept pushing myself harder, and sacrificed a lot of things to get to where I was. And so, after my first deployment, I said, I saw a lot of special forces guys out there, and they were just kind of running the show. You know, nobody messed with them. Nobody could tell them what to do. They were at the front line. They were really impacting change and doing amazing things. So I said, you know what? It would be cool if I was a special forces guy, a Green Beret. And so I put in my packet and got selected, went to the Special Forces qualification course. And that was about 2 years, I guess, of training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, in and around that area. And I graduated, became a Green Beret, and then I went on 2 more deployments with my Operational Detachment Alpha, with my A team as the commander. And so the second and third deployments were really rough. You know, a lot of fighting almost every day. You know, most of my team got Purple Hearts, which means that you were shot or injured in some way.
Wow.
My team sergeant, my right-hand guy, he was shot through both of his legs. My second deployment, my 18 Charlie, my senior engineer, he was shot through the head and he died. My interpreter, he was blown up in a vehicle. All these guys were great guys, obviously. My 18 Bravo, my weapons sergeant, he was blown up and he survived. But he was ejected from the Humvee like 100 feet down the road and broke his back. And
wow.
And, you know, my 18 Echo, he was in a vehicle. He got blown up and he tried to brace himself with both of his arms. And when we found him, both of his arms were completely snapped in half and just kind of like flopping, you
Jeez.
know. Let's see. You know, just a lot of stuff, you know. Went on a lot of missions, a lot of firefights, caught a lot of bad guys. It was, I guess, an impactful rotation, my second deployment, because we were positioned in an area where there were really no other coalition forces around us. And so it was just us at a remote outpost, generally in the middle of nowhere, an hour and a half away from any other forces. And the enemy knew that. And so they saturated the area. And they fought us all the time. Either they threw indirect fire at us, they put IEDs at us, they would, you know, fight us and run away. And eventually, we recruited some Kurdish Peshmerga soldiers to pass this demarcation line and fight for me. And so I initially had 600 of them, and I did something that no other commander had ever done previously. Is we took this unit. We went to this village, and usually the enemy sees us, and they're like, oh, there's too many guys. They'll leave. They'll run away. They'll see us from miles and miles away. And then when we leave, they'll come back in and just reoccupy. Mm. And so I took these Kurdish soldiers out to this village. You know, we thought we were going to get into a fight. No fight. Tons of IEDs, improvised explosive devices, roadside bombs on the way out there. And I said, all right, guys, here's the deal. We're leaving, but you're not. You're staying here. I'm like, okay. And the enemy matriculated back in the village thinking that we had left, not realizing the Kurds were there. And so we just caught a bunch of them up, and we gained a foothold, and then we slowly started to take back more and more of the area, which culminated in an actual city that we liberated on the last mission we conducted in Iraq on my second deployment.
Wow. That's great. I mean, first of all, Jason, thank you for your service to the country. I mean, and to go through those experiences, I can't imagine the mental fortitude, even today, to be able to just, you know, persevere and push through some of that. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, incredibly challenging. Going back to the Green Beret.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. How did that compare to your Army Ranger School experience? You know, Green Beret, that sounds like kind of the next level up, similar to a Navy SEAL. How was that training experience, and what was that like?
Yeah, so I would look at it like this. If you graduate from, let's say you're an infantry guy and you graduate and you're an infantry officer, it's sort of like graduating high school. Okay. You become a Ranger, it's sort of like graduating college. Okay. You become a Green Beret, it's like getting your master's degree. Mm. And if you're a Delta Force guy, it's getting your PhD, right? The Rangers are more door kickers, so very physical, very violent, you know, tip of the spear sort of thing. The Green Berets are the guys that go in before anybody else gets there. You grow beards, you dress like the local indigenous population. Sometimes, you'll ride horseback or whatever. Wow. And then you train the locals, to fight. And so for us, we were only a 12-man team, but these Kurds I brought down initially 600, and then I brought down 800. And for the last mission, I had 4,000 Kurds. So it was me and my 12 guys, and I was the commander, and 4,000 Kurds were under my command.
Wow.
So that's kind of the Green Berets role. And so instead of kicking the door down, which we can do and we were trained to do, we'll have them, the indigenous forces, kick the door down, and we'll just follow in behind them. That's kind of how we do things.
That's amazing. And how old were you, I guess, age-wise? So you came out of the initial academy, you went to Korea. How old were you in Korea? And then how old were you when you got your Green Beret?
Yeah, gosh, I guess I was about 24 years old in Korea or so. And then when I got my Green Beret, I think I was about 28.
28.
Yeah. Yeah, around that time.
Yeah. Well, for lack of a better term, it sounds incredibly, cool and powerful to be kind of that well trained and accoladed, and to be able to lead, and this strategy that goes behind it, right? I don't think a lot of people appreciate, as a Green Beret or anyone in the Army, the strategy behind, going in as a local, kind of recon undercover, and being able to bring local forces together. I didn't even realize that was something that was going on in Iraq. I just imagined it was all U.S. troops, but that's awesome. That's really cool. And so I read you were a detachment commander. Was that similar to Green Beret? Is that a different, or was that your role?
No, yeah, it's the same thing. So You get your Green Beret. If you're an officer, you're going to command something, and so you command an A team. Like the old TV show with Hannibal, like that's the A team. So that's your A team, and everybody on your A team is also a Green Beret, and they went through training, and a lot of them are older guys. They've been there for 20, 25, sometimes 30 years. And some of them are brand new. Some of them are brand new guys. And you have your officer, you have your team sergeant, your right-hand guy, you have your Fox, which is your intelligence officer, sometimes you have a warrant officer, and then you have weapons sergeant, sort of they're experts in everything weapon, and you have engineers, experts in everything engineering-wise, building stuff, blowing stuff up. Deltas are the medics, Echoes are the commo guys. And so that's your team. Usually have 12 to 15 guys, more or less, on your team at any given time. And each team is a specific kind of role or task. I was on a mountain team, so we were supposed to be experts in mountaineering and that sort of thing. You have other teams that are halo teams, high altitude, low opening, so parachute teams, and a scuba team, so sort of like Navy SEALs, and all sorts of different teams they have.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting to see how it all fits together and the intricacies there as you come together as a force. So how long were you in total in the military, Jason, from when you graduated to when you ended your service?
So I started in 1995 at West Point, sort of like a basic training during the summer there. Then obviously I left for 2 years for my mission, came back, and then, like I said, officer basic course, Ranger School, Korea, combat in Iraq, Special Forces training, went back to Iraq, Special Forces training, went back to Iraq, and then I got promoted to be an S3, so an operations officer as a major, and you kind of leave your team behind you. And I got my MBA at BYU, and then I went back to Special Forces Command at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And while I was there, they medically retired me at about 15 years. So 5 years until an actual retirement, where most people retire at 20. I retired at 15. My last mission as a commander was to Africa, to Mali, Africa. And it was a mission where we were training the local forces. They were called the Echelon Tactique Inter-Armée against mainly Tuareg rebels. So they were Al-Qaeda in the lands of Maghreb. So there were rebels that were coming down on horseback, mainly across the Sahara Desert, and they were, harassing towns and raping women and killing children and stealing and doing all these things. And so they told us, when you go to Mali, there's all sorts of weird things out there that could kill you, like parasites and different things. And the last team that was there, 2 of the guys on the team got spinal meningitis, and that's like you can die, if you're not treated within like immediately.
Jeez. And
they have a bug over there, a parasite that if it gets into your eyeball, it like eats your eye out, so you go blind, and all these crazy things. And so we were out in the middle of the jungle essentially, and we were training these guys how to put a patrol base up, and we're in the middle of this village, and it was like straight out of National Geographic, and the dudes were wearing loincloths and they had spears, and the women, their breasts were hanging out. It was straight National Geographic. And
jeez.
And that night that we were there, I started to get real sick, and so I took some Advil. I was drinking water. Progressively got worse and worse and worse, throwing up everywhere. And my medic, he was like, "Hey man, I'm worried about you. I'm gonna put you down and get you some rest." I'm like, "Cool, man." Like my team was on it, so I didn't have any worries about them not knowing what to do. And eventually, my team was really worried. They're like, "Hey man, like we think something might be up, so we're gonna send you to the embassy." And so they sent me back in a vehicle with a couple other guys, and eventually what happened was I came down with a seizure disorder, and so like an epileptic seizure, tonic-clonic seizure. I seize up, I start shaking, I bite my tongue, and I have short-term memory loss and that sort of thing. And so I went back home with the team a couple weeks later, and the first night I was back home, I had a seizure in my bed, and I woke up and the cops were there, firefighters were there, paramedics were there, and they're asking me questions like, "Hey man, where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm in my house." Like, "Well, what state are you in?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like, "Do you remember going to Africa?" I'm like, "I've never been to Africa in my life. I'd just been there for a few months,
Jeez.
And so like, "Hey, we're going to take you to the hospital." And so they took me to the hospital. They put me down. They gave me some medicine, and woke up. And I remembered everything. But every few weeks, I'd have another seizure. And my unit was like, "Hey, man, you can't deploy. You can't fire a gun. You can't jump out of an airplane. Hell, man, you can't even drive it to work. Like, we're going to do our best to see what's wrong with you." And so they sent me to a neurologist in Colorado, North Carolina. And eventually they were like, "Hey, man, we have no idea what's going on with you, so we're going to have to just kick you out." And so that's what happened. They kicked me out, medically retired me.
Were you mentally, were you ready for that at that point? Was that like a disappointing thing? I imagine after, 15 plus years of grueling service, training, what was it like? Was a part of you relieved, or was it mostly disappointment? And how did you feel in that moment?
In the military, you do a lot of running, and so you run in formation, and you never want to be a fallout. Meaning, like, you're going to run a certain distance at a certain pace, and if you can't do it, you fall out.
Got it.
And everybody sees, everybody knows, and it felt like to me that I was running a race, and when I retired early, it kind of felt like I was a fallout. So there's that regret. But at the same time, I look at it, I'm like, you know what? I was an officer, and so my team time, like actually going on deployments and doing all that stuff, which people say is the most fun you're going to have as an officer, it was over. I was a staff guy. I was a PowerPoint ranger. You know what I mean? Like, I was supporting the teams now. I was making decisions. I was giving a lot of briefs, to generals and colonels and things like that. And it wasn't the most fun thing in the world. I found purpose in it and pleasure in it, but it wasn't the most fun thing. I feel like I missed out on some opportunities to go back to combat and lead some folks and do some things. It's a fast pace and it's a tough environment. And I was single. And so as you start to get older and you start to break down, you start to feel like lonely, and you start to feel like I at least for me, I was like, I need to have a family.
Yeah.
I need to lay some roots and do something, because I'm just getting older. I had gone to BYU to get my MBA, and so that opened a lot of doors for me. opened my eyes in a lot of ways. And so, although I felt, like I missed out, like I was missing out on something, I was also excited about the future because it was opening a door that was brand new and I could choose any direction, any path I wanted to go. And so I was excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. And how old were you when you retired from the military kind of officially?
37, I believe.
Okay.
Wait, 39? I guess 39. Yeah, so I was a little older, yeah.
And what were the seizures, was that related at all to the Africa trip and any exposure there, or was it completely unrelated? It just happened to
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody was ever to tell me.
Do you still have issues today, or has it been?
Yeah, I have it on lockdown pretty well, but it's always a big fear because they never diagnosed it. They have no idea.
Yeah.
Neurology is, gosh, in my experience, from what I've seen, is sort of a pseudoscience. Like I went there and it's kind of like, well, these are the things that happened to me. What do you think? Well, it could be this, it could be that. We don't know. Yeah. And it's like, well, what good are you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We're going to do some tests. And so the last thing they told me was a joke. They were like, all right, we're going to bring you in. We're going to put these electrodes on your skull. And then we're going to induce a seizure. Like, okay. Jeez. And I'm like, why? And like, well, we're going to see where in your brain the seizure is occurring. I'm like, okay, great. Then what? Well, then we're going to go in and we're going to cut out that part of your brain that's causing the seizure. I'm like, huh. I'm like, well, is that going to affect me? Like, I'm pretty sure you need your brain to live.
No kidding.
I'm like, well, it might make you a vegetable or it might stop the seizure. So, those are the options. I'm like, I'm good with my brain as is. So,
yeah, no kidding.
I'm going to take the next option.
Wow.
And they give you medicine that just, flattens you. It takes the life out of your eyes and it depresses you and it makes you not who you are. So that's another component that a lot of people that don't take drugs and that aren't on medicine don't understand.
Sure.
It's it doesn't help you like you think it does necessarily.
Right. Well, I hope nothing but the best for you and your health, man.
Thanks, man.
Sounds like you're hopefully on the up and up and doing better.
Yeah.
Well, with so what year was it? You were 39, retired from the military. You'd gone to BYU, done your MBA. So what year about was that?
Oh man, let me do the math. 2015.
2015. Okay, cool. So let's talk about Mission 60. So how did that idea come about, and where did that formulate, and maybe talk us through the founding of that and kind of the growth.
I started it in Utah at BYU. So it was one of the classes. It was sort of like you can be an entrepreneur and create your own business and what would you do and so forth. And I thought, you know what, man, I'm really passionate about leadership and about people and about sports, and I wonder if there's a way that I can combine all those things together. So I got together with my buddies in the military, some of them Medal of Honor recipients, and the highest award achievement you can earn in the military, and Green Berets and Delta Force guys and Rangers and Marines and Navy SEALs. And I said, hey guys, I'm thinking about creating this company as part of this MBA program, and I'm kind of excited about it, and I want to go teach professional sports teams how to be leaders, because I think that's something that's sorely lacking. And this was prior to Jocko.
Okay.
So Jocko wasn't even alive. He was alive, but he wasn't even like around really at this time.
Yeah.
Or other people like that, like David Goggins. They weren't doing this thing. So I got my guys together and they were excited, and I started cold calling NFL teams, and I found a list on Google of front office numbers and started going down the list alphabetically, and I finally landed to the New York Jets, and they said, hey man, we're not going to hire you, but you can come and pitch if you want, just for some practice.
Yeah.
And so we went up there and pitched, and after the presentation with the head coach and the GM, they're like, hey, you guys knocked it out of the park. You're hired.
Nice.
And so this was during my MBA program. And so we got hired by the Jets to work with them the entire season. And we had a great season with them. They had a great season. And the word got out in the NFL that we were doing this, and then other teams started hiring us. problem is I was getting my MBA and I had to go back into the military, so I couldn't like devote full time to this or do anything like that. It was sort of a side project, a side hustle when I had time.
Sure.
And I thought that could be a great business opportunity for me moving forward. And as I grew the business, especially after I left the military, I realized it wasn't just about the military and telling stories and that sort of thing. We had to get scientists on the team, people with PhDs and researchers and experts and that sort of thing. Because a lot of my guys would be asked questions like, well, how did you do that? How did you overcome that? You know, and they would say, well, I just did it, or I relied on my training, or some BS answer like that, you know. Yeah. And the experts, the PhDs, the scientists I have on my team, they're the ones that can explain the theory behind that, the so what, the now what. You know, so you get this really interesting, inspirational story from my military guys, and then you have, okay, here's how you apply it to your life. And so once we did that, we started to see more corporate clients, and it hasn't skyrocketed like I'd hoped, like Jocko, but we have an amazing team, and we've got, you know, an amazing stack of former clients, you know, celebrity clients.
Yeah. So are you guys continually just, how many are on your team? And then what's the next few years look like for Mission 60? Kind of what's your plan and what's your goal?
So I wrote a book called Deliberate Discomfort, and it's about my experiences right after I earned my Green Beret and reported to my unit for the first time. And my boss is telling me, you know, Jason, we're going to combat in a few short weeks. These are the people that I need you to meet and get to know them, ask them questions, and find out what makes them tick, because they're the backbone of this company. And if you can be like them, you're going to survive and you're going to thrive. And so I wrote that book. We sold 40,000 copies. It's a bestseller.
Wow.
And it's intended to be a trilogy. And so I'm writing book number 2 right now, tentatively called Relentless Resolve. And
Nice.
So as much as Deliberate Discomfort is about making the choice to do hard things, say, all right, I'm going to do this. Relentless Resolve is about, okay, I chose to do it. Now I'm doing it. It sucks. I want to quit.
Yeah.
How do I keep moving forward? So that's what the second book is about. And we have a Deliberate Discomfort challenge, and we do it several times a year. The first challenge is going to be January 2nd, so in 2 weeks. It's free for anybody that wants to do it. It's a 60-day program.
Okay.
We challenge you mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, emotionally, and professionally. So we send you workouts every day. We send you mindfulness exercises every day. We send you professional videos that you can watch every day. And then there's some other requirements that we ask you to do. And it's been well received. We have about 1,200 people that have gone through it in the last 2 years. I want to grow that. Previously, it was $297 a person. This year, it's free, and I want to just kind of open up that funnel and get more people in it and get the word out, because it's awesome. I've done it 4 times. Well, this is going to be my 4th time doing it, and so I beta tested it, did it in 2021, did it in 2022, and then I'm going to start with the class in 2023 on January 2nd.
I love it. That sounds great. I'll have to sign up, man. I did I'm sure you've heard of Hard 75 or 75 Hard, whatever it is, and stuff like that. But yeah, I will say, when you dedicate yourself to do something over a certain period of time, it helps change kind of your whole mindset from a structural standpoint. I love when I feel like I'm organized and I'm committed to something, and so that sounds kind of right up my alley. I'll have to take a look at that, man.
You know, sounds great. Psychologically, when I'm organized, like it helps me helps me have less anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
Know? And I can focus, and I don't have the distractions, and it just feels like I'm getting something done.
Yeah.
So the challenge is awesome. It's challenge.deliberateness.com.
Okay.
And you know, like I said, it's not just losing weight. It's like getting that mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I love it, man. I created it. My team and I created it, and I'm a fan. You know,
that's great.
A hair club for men. Like, I'm not only the president, I'm also a client. You know, because I love it.
Yeah. There you go. And how about Warrior Rising? So Mission 60 is more of the consulting. I guess, you know, your main business for profit. It sounds like Warrior Rising is a nonprofit organization. What's the purpose and mission of Warrior Rising?
So as I was building Mission 60, I'd bring out guys that were wounded, guys that were suffering from PTSD, and I needed more instructors for my events. And I thought it was a good thing to bring these guys back out, get a chance to have them on the team again and get them out and moving and being around their brothers again, their community again. And it was powerful for the client to hear these stories about resiliency, and it's cathartic for the guys. And, time and time again, these guys were telling me, I lost my purpose. All these charities take me hunting and fishing or build homes for me or give me free stuff. It's just giving me one good day. Like I go hunting, have a good time, I come back home, nothing's changed for me. And people were donating millions of dollars a year to help me have one good day.
Yeah.
A home was built for me. Number one, I didn't ask for this home, they just gave it to me. I feel terrible because I wanted to build a home for myself. I wanted to earn it myself. I wanted to feel the pride of doing it on my own. And now everyone feels proud because they did it for me. And I don't want to go inside my home. I sit outside all day long because I just feel awful.
Yeah.
I smoke weed all day because I'm pushing back on the feelings associated with someone giving me this home. And I said, all right, guys, well, what do you want me to do about it? Because the vets are used to tough love, and that's what people that aren't in the military don't understand is, you can't talk to them like that. And being from that community, I can talk to them and find out what's going on. So what do you want me to do? What are you going to do? And they said, well, Jason, what did you do to find your purpose again? And I said, well, after the military and dealing with the medical issues I'm dealing with, starting a business is how I found my purpose again. It gives me a chance to be creative and build something and devote my time and be, deadly focused on doing this and making money for you guys, for my team, for my family, adding value to clients. That's my purpose. And guys were like, hey, Jay, we want to have that same experience, that same feeling. Well, I said, well, first you have to have an idea. You have ideas? And they all had ideas. Most of them were just the worst ideas you ever heard in your life, And I was like, guys, don't do that, and I explained to them why they shouldn't do that. And they thanked me for it. And I thought to myself, you know what? I saved this guy's life savings. I saved him years of his life that he would have spent pursuing this idea that never would have worked out.
Yeah.
And some of the ideas were really good. And I told them, you should do that. And they started asking me more questions. Well, how do I do that? What should I do? And I said, Google some stuff and figure it out. They had no idea what a business plan was or a pro forma or an operating agreement or SWOT analysis. And they were asking me all these questions. And I just kind of deferred them to Google, like, you're smart, figure it out.
Yeah.
And we had a great, it was one particular event where this all happened. We had a great rest of the night and we celebrated this. We were with the Oakland Raiders at the time. And I went home and I started thinking about this and I was like, you know what? These guys were reaching out for help. They really wanted some help for a good reason. It wasn't about, giving them a fish. It was about teaching them how to fish, and that's true charity. Because you give somebody a fish, they're going to come back the next day and ask for another one. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. It's like the homeless situation, right? Let's give him a home. Well, that's not going to work because he's going to leave that home and he's mentally unstable and he needs to help psychologically, and someone needs to take that person aside and train that person and really build them up so they can build a house or buy a house on their own, right? That's true charity. And so I created Warrior Rising with a friend of mine from the BYU MBA program, Joe Hilton, and a buddy of mine from West Point. He's a Ranger, Harvard business guy, lost his leg, Ryan Miller, and the three of us created Warrior Rising to help veterans find their purpose again through business ownership. And so at first it was sort of a side project, just helping vets out. We helped 6 the first year, and over 7 years, meaning this year, 2022, we helped over 8,000 veterans start businesses, and raised almost $3 million this year alone.
Wow.
And it's been a great year, and it's been really exciting seeing the organization grow like it has. So we help veterans and their immediate family members, if they have an idea on the back of a napkin, if they want to start a franchise business, if they want to buy an existing business, or if they have a business and they're stuck and they don't know how to scale it. So we help those people. That's
great. And all volunteer, kind of nonprofit, or how are you guys? I mean, when someone comes in to get consulting on the nonprofit side, is that just volunteer work that you're doing, or you have other consultants that are helping them out?
No, when you just use volunteers, the quality is poor.
Sure.
You know, because you can't really hold them to anything. Hey, I need you to get this done by Friday. You don't get it done by Friday. You're like, hey, what's the deal, man? They're like, well, I didn't have time to do it. Nothing I can say about it. You're a volunteer.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
But if I pay people, then I can hold them accountable for doing the things we need to do. So for a long time, we're a volunteer-only organization, and I realized we needed to change. And we were making enough money that we could hire people. And so we have a staff of 9 right now and a board of 9. And, everything is free for the veterans. So we exist by donations, tax-deductible donations. So individual private donors, foundations, corporations, they can all give to Warrior Rising and get involved and be coaches or mentors or host an event for us or anything like that. So if you really want to be a part of a charity to see change, to actually help veterans, Warrior Rising is a place for you.
That's great. Yeah, and I would encourage anyone listening to please go check it out. It's incredible what you're doing, and thank you for your service again on that front.
Thank you, my man.
Going back to Mission 60, you mentioned the donations helping to fund Warrior Rising. How did you guys get Mission 60 off the ground? I mean, for most businesses, right, you need some sort of capital infusion, or maybe it was savings, or what were those early days like trying to scrap together, a business for you guys?
Yeah, I bootstrapped it, but we didn't need much to bootstrap because I had a job with the military I was getting paid. Mm-hmm. The guys that I brought out with me were also getting paid by the military or from their jobs. Mm-hmm. And the first client was the New York Jets, and they paid us.
Yeah.
So we just used that money to buy equipment and reinvest in the business. And I paid all the guys something. Yeah. And they were appreciative of that. So I never got any outside investment until I wrote my book. And then I got some money to do that, to market it and to push it out and so forth. That's the only other time I got outside investment. To expand and grow the company and scale it. Maybe in the future we'd need some, Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. No, but there's something to be said about bootstrapping and keeping it, in-house. I mean, when you give up control or ownership, there's always it's a double-edged sword. You get the infusion of cash, but there's also, you know what I mean? So good for you guys. That's great.
Well, it depends how fast you want to grow as well.
Yeah.
If you want to do it on your own, it's going to take years and years and years, decades, you know?
Yeah.
If you want to do it quickly, like Lumio, for example, they've been around for a year. They're already approaching $1 billion company.
Yeah.
It wasn't because they started from scratch. It's because they got tons and tons of money to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you mentioned your book. I love the title, Deliberate Discomfort. What is, if there's one thing that people could take away, or what's the one message you're really trying to help instill in people with that book? What would it be?
It's all about inspiration. That's all I can do. People get confused with motivation. Oh, you're a motivational speaker, or you motivate people. I can't motivate anybody. Right? You can only motivate yourself. The only true motivation is self-motivation. The only thing I can do is inspire you. I can inspire you to motivate yourself. And once you're motivated, you take action. And once you take action, eventually you're going to see some results. And once you see those results, you're going to inspire yourself to be motivated, to take more action.
Sure.
So it's a full circle sort of thing. And so I like to inspire people. And that's what Deliberate Discomfort is all about, is inspiring people to do whatever it is that's hard for you. And to each his own. Everybody has their own hard. Some people will say, hey, take a cold shower in the morning. Well, if that's your hard, do it. I lived in Russia, and in the springtime, up until the fall, they shut off all the hot water. You don't have a choice. You're taking a cold shower.
Yeah.
Right? I'm used to it. It's not that hard, Some people will say, make your bed in the morning. Well, I lived at West Point for 4 years, right? We had to make our bed every single morning. Not to standard, but like to perfection. It's not hard for me to do that.
Yeah.
And plus, when I wake up in the morning, my wife is still in bed, so I'm not going to make my bed when she's still in there.
Sure.
So some people will say West Point was the best 4 years of my life. I loved every second of it. I wish I could go back there. I say, man, I don't even know what you're smoking, man. And the West Point was the worst 4 years of my life. I would never go back there. I hated every second of it. That's my hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't that dude's hard.
Yeah.
He loved it. It was my hard.
Sure.
When hard times come to me, you start thinking about things that were hard for you. Yeah. And it starts to inspire you, and you start to use it as to help you kind of get through whatever it is you're going through. And many times in combat or in training, when times were tough and dark and I was hungry and I was tired and you were just smoked, I would legitimately say to myself, at least I'm not at West Point. Because that was my heart.
Yeah, I imagine, man. That's, yeah. Well, I love that. I love the title. I love the message. It's on my list to read. I wish I would have.
I got a copy in my car. I'll give it to you.
Oh, thanks, man. That would be great. Yeah, I'd love to read it. Just a couple other quick questions for you, Jason. Why did you, when you came back, you went to BYU, got your MBA, you were retired formally from your military service. Why did you choose entrepreneurship as opposed to, hey, I'm going to go, snag a job at, as an accountant or, work in communications or do sales or, it could have been anything, right?
Yeah.
Why did you pursue your own path?
Well, number one, my experiences in life. So I was a Green Beret and you're sort of conditioned to be an entrepreneur. Hey, go to this foreign country, establish a patrol base. Now find some people to train. Now use these people to train and to fight for you. Now take over this place, right? That's entrepreneurship 101.
Sure.
Like in the most extreme of environments.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? So it's been ingrained in me to be an entrepreneur. And it's not for everybody. You have to have a certain mindset. The second thing is show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I said that a few times on this call, on the podcast already. I looked at what my buddies were doing. One of my buddies, Jesse, he had left the military after 5 years. We were linebackers at West Point together. He went to West Texas where he grew up. He took over his father's oil company and he turned it into a $20 million buyout, which then led to another buyout and to another. So he was an entrepreneur living in West Texas, like starting up all sorts of different oil type companies. Another buddy of mine, they played football with at West Point, he became a government contractor in cybersecurity, and he was just crushing it. Yeah. A buddy of mine out here that I served my mission with in Russia, he started a third-party logistics company. And by the time I was getting out of the military, he was getting ready to sell his company. He sold it for like $50 million.
Jeez.
So I was like, you know what? If these idiots could do it, I can too. You know what I mean? Like, I know what these guys are all about. I know how hard they work, and I know if they can do it, I can do it as well. And I'm proud of them, and I love them, and I don't mean anything derogatory towards them because they're very intelligent, skilled people.
Yeah.
But it's all about the people you surround yourself with. If you see them and see their follies, their foibles, their failures, and not be entranced by thinking they're infallible or they're just incredible and they don't do any wrong.
Yeah.
You're like, hey man, there's nothing to it. You just have to pick the right vertical. You have to pick the right path. You have to get lucky, and you have to bust your ass. That's it.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple formula when you break it down. And I love that point because I felt the same way. I came out of BYU and went to kind of corporate America. I went to work for JP Morgan and then another real estate group, and would see people who either didn't go to school or had very minimal schooling or education or training or didn't go work for big real estate groups that were just crushing it and had a lot of success creating real estate businesses. And so to your point, it's like, man, if they can do it, I certainly can do it. It's just having the confidence and the formula, kind of like you outlined there. What would be your advice to somebody who's either wanted to start a company or become an entrepreneur, or maybe they're coming out of military service or school, but they just haven't done that, or they're not quite there yet? What advice would you give to an early entrepreneur?
I would say this. There's a lot of advice I could give, but the one thing that stands out to me is find out who you are. What are you all about? What are your values? Define you, and then turn the volume up. And that'll help you determine the direction you should take your life. Don't go chasing shiny objects. I'm going to be a real estate guy, but I hate it. I have no desire to be a real estate guy. If that's your thing, if you like it, you're fired up about it and gets you out of the bed in the morning, then hell yeah, you're going to be a great real estate guy. Hey, I'm going to be a cybersecurity guy. I know nothing about cybersecurity. I don't, why? Because you're chasing dollars? You know what I mean? Like, don't do that. Find out what you want to do and figure a way to make money doing it. That's what I would advise people.
I love it, man. That's great advice. two last questions really quick, Jason. You mentioned habits. You've got this program that's kicking off January 2nd. What have you done, either part of your military service or what you do today on a daily or weekly basis that you feel like helps ground you or has helped you succeed from habits or daily kind of rituals?
It's I think the art of compartmentalization, and that's something that you sort of master in the military. Too many guys sacrifice things that they shouldn't be sacrificing, like their family or their health or the physical health or the mental health, and they're pursuing dollar signs or pursuing something that isn't tangible or something that's not going to last them. And so for me, when it's family time, right? There's a digital sunset, meaning I turn off the cell phone. I don't answer text messages. I don't go to my computer. It's focusing on the family. Waking up early to go to the gym so that I work out and come back before my family is even awake. So I don't have to sacrifice that time away from them. Figuring out ways to be a good dad to your kids. That's something that I wish I was better at, and I'm always looking for other ideas and things like that. Figuring out how to be a better husband to your wife, and that also means like not forcing things, finding out what she wants to do, asking her what she wants to do, and then sort of doing it. She needs some alone time. She needs some space. She wants to go somewhere. She wants to hang out with her friends. Well, then that's being a good husband. One of the things I learned in the military was you ask yourself, do I have what it takes to be a Green Beret? Do I have what it takes to be a Ranger? And you start to think about it, and then you start to second guess yourself. And maybe I don't. Maybe I'm weak. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm whatever. And when instructors see you doing that, they'll say, don't self-assess. I know what you're doing. Don't self-assess. Whether or not you earn your Green Beret is not up to you. It's up to me. I decide. It's kind of the same thing with your family. Are you a good husband? It's not up to you. It's your wife's decision. She decides. You a good husband? It's not up to you. You can't say you're a good father. It's not up to you. You can't say if you're a good father or not. It has nothing to do with you. Ask your kids, are you a good father? They'll tell you. I'll leave it with that.
That's amazing. No better way to end it. I love it, Jason. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your service to our country. Can't say enough about that. And to anyone listening, please go check out Warrior Rising and Jason's book, Deliberate Discomfort. Is there another way people can connect with you? Are you on Instagram or social media?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me on the show.
Of course, man.
As far as thanking me for my service, I'll say this. You were worth it, and don't let me down.
That's right.
Social media, I'm on LinkedIn primarily. So you can find me, Jason Van Camp, on LinkedIn. As far as Warrior Rising, you go to warriorrising.org to find out about us. We got a pretty nice website where you can help us out with your time, your talent, or your treasure. For Mission Zig Zero, you can go to missionzigzero.com. If you want to get the book Deliberate Discomfort, you can always go to Amazon and just put Deliberate Discomfort in there. And then the challenge, it's challenge.deliberateness.com. So a lot of websites there, and hope to see your listeners joining us in some capacity.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks again, Jason. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.